Support American-made tariff-free clothing with American Giant with American Giant. They aren't affected by tariffs because their clothing products never left the U.S. Get 20% off your first order when you use promo code STAPLE20 at american-giant.com.
In a so-called free state, officials and stakeholders concoct solutions to problems often created by other bureaucrats and with little regard for infringements on the people. These stories are born at the apex of freedom and entrepreneurship. We foolishly advocate for the taxpayer. Brian's Beat presents Freedom Fools.
Ah, yes, the Fool. On a pretty nice Saturday afternoon. I hope you're enjoying it, and I hope you are ready to enjoy another edition of Freedom Fools on WBSM. I am the lead fool. Glad to be in the chair again, as usual. As we like to say, yes, I am. A little bit different than what we do Monday through Friday, and lately we have been taking a look at some potential ballot questions, and we're going to do so this hour. In particular, question that I think is interesting to some folks. I don't know how many. I know there are plenty of people that are passionate on this issue, but I don't know what's going to happen November, whatever the date is, 6th, 7th, 8th, 29th, 3rd. Of 2026. Anyway, let's get started. Today is Ancestor Appreciation Day. Yeah, I think I probably spelled that incorrectly. It's Ancestor Appreciation Day. It's also Family Health and Fitness Day. I did my walk early today. I'm so fit, my legs hurt. And it's also World Tourism Day. If you could plan your dream vacation, where would you want to go on this World Tourism Day? I have one son right now that's doing the tourism thing over in outside of Italy, Sardinia, which I think is probably closer to Spain, but I think it's a possession of Italy. On this date in 1928, now get this, the Republic of China. Now, to the best of my knowledge, I was not alive in 1928, but every record that I've seen expresses that at that particular time, China, not communist China, China was the largest nation on our planet. 1928. On this particular date, the knuckleheads running our country at that particular time said, hey, let's recognize the Republic of China. And they did so. What were they thinking? China has been around longer than the United States of America. 1928, we're going to recognize China. Hey, China, we see you over there. You look great. The Brian's Beat quote of the day: to know what you know and what you do not know, that is true knowledge. To know what you know and what you do not know, that is true knowledge. Kind of confusing, but it came from Confucius, speaking of China. Folks knew who Confucius was prior to 1928. You figure it out for yourself. Anyway, so there is a signature drive underway for a ballot question in 2026 to regulate marijuana. Now, you're probably saying, don't we already have a CCC? Don't we already regulate it? Yes, is the answer to both of those questions. What would happen to the CCC? What other type of regulations are we talking about here? Well, to help us with this is the chairperson of the Coalition for a Healthy Massachusetts. Her name is Wendy Wakeman, and we welcome Wendy to Freedom Fools. Wendy, good afternoon. How are you?
Good afternoon, Brian. I'm fantastic. Blue skies and green grass out my window. I couldn't be happier.
Green grass? Aren't we talking about marijuana?
Well, I was talking about the kind of grass I have in my yard.
Oh, okay.
I don't have marijuana in my yard, Brian. I know a lot of people do, but I just don't.
Okay, fair enough. So tell us about this ballot question that you would like to see on the ballot in 2026.
A group of physicians, parents, religious leaders, and other concerned people have put forth a petition. And as you know, the petition needs to get the required number of signatures by November of this year to be on the ballot in November of 2026. And the upshot is that the petition, should we get the requisite number of signatures, there'll be a question repealing the legality of recreational marijuana. So we'll still have the medical marijuana system, but pot shops, recreational pot shops will be gone. And the ability to home grow marijuana for recreational uses would also be repealed.
It would be repealed. Yeah. So if a person is caught in possession of marijuana, what happens?
As I understand it, so first, I'm not a lawyer, and second, this petition is in early days, and I'm sure you, in doing your homework, read through the legalese. What our lawyers tell us is that there won't be a lot of penalties for possession levied as part of this. We'll keep the same penalties that are in place now.
The penalties will stay the same. So in other words, if you're caught with more than 1 ounce in your vehicle or on your person, then there is the possibility of penalty. If you try selling marijuana, there is the possibility of penalty, just like if I were to sell alcohol without a license. Okay.
That's right.
So why do we want to go down this road, Wendy? We the people voted to legalize marijuana back in 2016, and it took the longest time for the first marijuana shop to open up.
It did. And it's not been a unquestioned success. So, as you know, we taxpayers are on the hook for about $600,000 in back pay for Shannon O'Brien because in what looks like it was a petty squabble, the treasurer, Deb Goldberg, removed her improperly from her position as chair of the Cannabis Commission. And we've got Sheriff Steve Tompkins having to take a medical leave because he was maybe pushing on some people. Maybe there was some graft and corruption going on there. He's been accused of some graft and corruption in trying to line his own pockets as we set up these marijuana shops. So it's becoming clearer and clearer that it's not going well. These recreational pot shops, the legalization of pot isn't something that's going well. We've seen an increase in driving under the influence with the legalized recreational marijuana. That's a little fuzzy, too, because, as you know, there is no test. There's no field sobriety test for marijuana. So the problem might be even worse than what people are saying. And then the parent angle is particularly sad because so many parents find themselves with really troubled young folks, and it's much easier with recreational marijuana for children and teens to obtain marijuana. And the research on...
Wait, just a second. It's easier for them to obtain marijuana. It's always been easy for kids to obtain marijuana and adults when it wasn't legal. Why? I don't even know what the difference is.
It's kind of funny, Brian. I think that in some ways that's true. When marijuana was illegal, it was easier for a 17-year-old to get the marijuana, while a 40-year-old might have a hard time finding a way to hook up, right? But it's just a lot more prevalent. It's a lot more prevalent with the recreational marijuana. and it's still fairly unregulated. The effects of marijuana on growing brains, the effects of marijuana on drivers, all of this stuff is understudied. And the 10 folks who put forward this petition are kind of holding up their hands and saying, hey, we went too far too fast. We've got graft, we've got corruption, we've got bad outcomes. Let's keep the medical marijuana in place, but let's get rid of this recreational marijuana. It's not doing society any favors.
I was on the side that said, look, why do we want government regulating something that they can't even get a grasp on? I see problems if we stop the pot shops. And I'll tell you what, I noticed in your release, there may be some elected officials that are against this, but you know what they're not against? They're not against the state tax revenues that have been coming in from marijuana. We're talking millions upon millions of dollars. They don't want to lose that money.
Yeah, the money has turned out to kind of be a false flag. There's not as much money coming in as was anticipated. And then, as I said, we've got more than $500,000 right now going back to Shannon O'Brien.
But that's not the people smoking the pot. That's not the pot shop owners.
No, you're saying that the net effect of recreational pot is that we get a lot of money. And I'm saying not as much as we were promised. And on top of that, the regulating has been really difficult, has been full of corruption and graft, and that costs us money. In that one case where we can put a real legitimate number on it, the case of Shannon O'Brien, it's over $500,000. We don't know how much something like what Tompkins engaged in cost us. How much did it cost to investigate them? How much is being lost in the system elsewhere? It's just kind of slipping out the sides. So it has not been as great a benefit to the state budget as we hoped, right? As the pro.
I guess you can look at it from that standpoint. I'll give you the benefit of a doubt, but if you take those couple of things away, I could easily turn around and say, look how many police officers and judges and whomever don't want to point a particular finger that were taking when it was illegal.
Yeah.
So it works both ways.
It works both ways, and it's complicated. And when we start talking like that, we have to admit, Brian, that the illegal pot market has not gone away, and that the black market for marijuana is still a thriving industry. And how much more difficult is it for our police to enforce things when we've got a legitimate market and an illegitimate market? And how do you know where it comes from?
Well, I would say that they shouldn't be in that business. There are other crimes that they need to concentrate on. And part of the problem that we see police officers working tremendous overtime is we try to fight crimes that are too difficult to fight and aren't winnable.
Yeah, I mean, this is such a big issue, and there's so many points to be made. I totally see what you're getting at there, but to say that cops shouldn't be trying to enforce the pot laws anyway, you also have to talk about the public inconvenience of the legalization of pot.
And what would that be?
Well, I don't know about you. But when I'm driving, and I drive down 93, and I'm headed to the South Coast because it's so beautiful down there where you guys live, I would say that at least 2 or 3 times a week, I find myself behind a car that stinks of skunk, and that I am just in traffic thinking the people in front of me have got a hot box going. And, it's everywhere. It went from being nowhere and from being something that people were very conscious of being careful about to being a drug that I can smell 2 or 3 times a week on the highway, can't walk across Boston Common without getting lungs full of it. I mean, it's a dirty gross drug on top of that. So we started this discussion by saying, I don't think the police should be enforcing it anyway. I think the police have got to enforce the people who are smoking drugs in their car. And I think the police have got to enforce the quality of life of people just smoking dope all over the city.
Well, I think you bring up a good point, and we already have laws in the books. You're not supposed to be smoking while in a moving vehicle. You're not supposed to be smoking on the Boston Common, and we do Brian, yeah, but join me in saying that it stopping day and night. What you're trying to do is throw the baby out with the bathwater. Stop the folks from smoking on the Common. Do your best to try to stop people that are smoking while driving, but don't put the pot shops out of business. Don't stop people from freely going in and buying marijuana. We have a lot of, I want to say trots, but we have a lot of stopgaps to make sure that the right people are going into these pot shops to buy their pot or their gummies or whatever it is that they want to take.
And we're not seeing those stopgaps working, right? We've seen emergency rooms have seen a huge spike in the number of children who've been poisoned by gummies, pets who've been poisoned by gummies. It is not a well-regulated. So it started out as not an industry at all, and now it's just an unregulated Wild West industry. And the effects on people who are just trying to live their life are real. I mean, I know, because an argument that you're making, which I think is a legitimate argument, is, why do we have the cops going after people who are smoking dope? They're just trying to have a good time. And my counter argument is they're having a good time in a way that hurts children, that hurts teenagers, and that makes my world pretty disgusting. I mean, I'm less safe on the highway, less safe everywhere I go. I don't think it rolled out in a very safe and effective way, and I think it needs to be rolled back.
I won't argue that. I think it took a long time to get to where we are today. Wendy Wakeman is our guest. She is the chairperson of the Coalition for a Healthy Massachusetts. 508-996-0500 is how you can get onto the program today. Hold tight. I'm going to get to you in just a second. As I think about this, Wendy, excuse me. Excuse me. There we go. As I think about this, you are trying this ballot question to basically end recreational marijuana. And if I'm not mistaken, up on Beacon Hill, I believe lawmakers have rolled out some type of bill they're talking about introducing cannabis cafes where people can actually go in to what would be a bar and smoke at the bar. So you've got a lot of people on Bacon Hill that are going to be fighting against you.
That's right. They're on Bacon Hill and they want to be bacon in the bar. I get it. There are a lot of opinions on this issue.
Well, but what do you think they're going to say? They'll put up opposition against this.
Yeah, I think there is going to be opposition against it, Brian. The bottom line is it's controversial. And I think there are a lot of people on both sides. You said at the beginning you don't know which way it'll go. I guess what I counter to that is, how crazy is that? And this is just, a rhetorical question, that they're looking to put cannabis into bars so that people can go in bars and smoke. And you can't take a cigarette into a bar anymore, can you?
No, you can't. And so, I fought against that one too. I don't smoke, but I can always find a different place, different restaurant. The market knows how to handle things better than government can. I guess that's part of where I come from. You ready to take some calls?
Sure. I agree with you on that, by the way.
508. Oops. Okay. Lost her or him. So let's go back to this, because let's get to why you're here on the show today. You need to get up about 75,000 certified signatures. Where do you have the troops out right now to try to do this?
So, Brian, we've never talked before, but I am a veteran of these signature drives. In fact, a few months ago, I finished the signature drive to repeal the reform of 135A, which was Maura Healey's gun reform legislation. And that question is going to be on the ballot in November 26th. So I'm a veteran of these signature gathering wars. This particular drive, we have people out. We have a lot of people in Bristol County, in fact. We have a group that's based out of Attleboro that's doing a lot of stuff in sort of from Worcester to the Cape. I can't give you any specific locations, but they're doing things in a different way than we had done things with the 135A repeal law. These folks are individuals who find high traffic spaces and just get as many signatures as they can in the day, and they work until the signatures are done. And that's different from, you might remember with the gun repeal, we had events where we would tell people in advance what supermarket we'd be at and things like that. And that's not the tactic that the folks who are gathering the signatures this time are using. But you'll see them at your supermarkets. You'll see them at events like the Big E and Topsfield Fair, that sort of thing. They're out there and they're gathering. So
you brought up the gun issue, and I can see the drastic difference. I think of a market basket. You try to gather as many signatures as possible, yet on the gun issue, I would think that there are many people that would sign a petition to try to restrict guns, but on the other side of the coin, trying to remove restrictions might be a little more difficult. And I would have signed your petition, by the way, if I'd known where you guys were around. But be that as it may, I think you'll get up the 75,000 certified signatures. I'm not sure that you're going to win at the ballot. I mean, look what happened in 2016. What do you think is really going to change people's minds that they're going to tip the scale to deregulate marijuana, recreational marijuana?
I don't know, Brian, right? This game is a one day at a time game, and right now we're really focused on getting those signatures. And I think there's going to be a lot of healthy debate. You are the first person that I've spoken to, as in my role as the person who talks about this issue for now. I think the debate is going to be hot and heavy come the 2026 election cycle. And I think really what you're going to see is that same coalition I mentioned at the beginning, coalition of parents who are concerned about the mental health of teenagers in particular, doctors, physicians. There's a lot in the medical community and in the social services community. There's a lot of real frustration at the easy availability of marijuana and the feeling that marijuana is harmless, right? This is the argument that we've been having since before I was born. Is marijuana harmless? We just don't have studies. Some of the studies say marijuana is harmless. Some of the studies say it's a real problem for mental health. We've heard a lot of talk about how the marijuana today is very different from the marijuana that was around in the 60s. I don't know which way it's going to go, but I think it's a public discussion worth having.
Fair enough, and that's why you're here on the show, to have this discussion. 508-996-0500. Thank you for your patience. You're on with our guest, Wendy Wakeman. How are you?
Hi, very well. How are you guys doing today?
Excellent.
Great.
Okay, the question I have is, if it's federally illegal, marijuana that is, so we have these parcels like in Bedford, wherever, could federal agents technically grab you after you've legally purchased it by Massachusetts standards and arrest you for it if they wish to?
Sure. Well, I don't know. We'd have to have an ICE agent on to talk about that. I think that we can draw parallels there. This was something we talked a lot about in 2016, and while I wasn't really involved, there was a lot of worry that the credit markets wouldn't support these pot shops because it was federally illegal. All of those things seem to have been ironed out. I'm uncomfortable with the state having different laws than the federal government. But I will say that at this point, there's been no move at all on the part of the feds to make life difficult for the recreational pot market. Would you agree with that, Brian?
I totally agree. In fact, I believe the Trump administration said that they weren't going to be going down that particular road.
Yeah.
All right, caller?
Oh, very good. I just wanted to, because it just threw me off because I know it's federally illegal, so I'm saying, what would stop them from me pulling out on Coggeshall Street if I had bought some and arresting me there, or taking away that I've just spent hundreds of dollars on? It just seems so crazy. But thank you so much for your help. I appreciate it. I'll be listening in.
Thank you. Let us continue. 508-996-0500. Hello, you're on with Wendy Wakeman.
Hello, let me tell you, as a person who has grown, sold, and bought marijuana for a very long time, it is a lot more difficult now to get access to marijuana. As for the quality and the difference, the only difference is now it doesn't have mold, gasoline, or whatever toxins that were mixed in when they were forced to ship it underneath the bilge and bolts and whatnot. So that's the reality. Do you want kids smoking marijuana that's filled with toxins and mold, or stuff that's going to give them health problems? And
if I quickly could speak for the caller, I think she would say she doesn't want anybody smoking anything. But that's
not the reality in the real world.
I know. I'm just saying. You're asking if she wants one or the other. My guess is I'll let you respond. Why am I talking for you?
I think that's an interesting point. I'm interested in. I think the caller makes a good point. What's that?
Go ahead, Wendy.
If we have a well-regulated industry, I think we're better off than having no industry at all. But I think what we have right now is a hybrid, and that it's not working. The access for teenagers to drugs continues to be extremely high, and there's a huge illegal drug market. But the caller has more experience in that than I do, so perhaps he's right.
Go ahead, caller.
No. They have access to it different ways. People who are not responsible. Let's go after the people that are irresponsibly giving access to children drugs. I mean, that's a problem, of course. Any type of drug shouldn't be given to a child, especially when it's not legal. So let's go after the people that are breaking the law and not make life difficult for those that are obeying the law. You know what I mean? And I've seen a million times people drinking to oblivion, and they're allowed to do it. And I've seen people smoke, and within a half an hour, they're fine. After the laughs wear off and after they eat some chicken wings and some hamburgers or whatever, everything's all fine and kind. So I appreciate your efforts and your dedication, though. I really do. God bless you.
God bless you. Hey, Brian, the caller just talked about, gave the picture of our pot smoker as somebody who's giggling and eating a lot of brownies. And I think that while that for years has been the stereotype of the pot smoker, I think we can't forget that there are a lot of parents who have seen marijuana-induced psychosis in their teenagers, and especially in their teenage sons. And I think there are situations in which that characterization leads to more pain. I also would argue that we've all known potheads in our life. You and I have both known potheads in our life. And it's rarely been something where I say, oh, yeah, he's a pothead, but he just giggles and eats brownies. Really, I think, yeah, I remember he was a pothead. He spent all of his time in his basement smoking weed while his children were growing up, and his wife had to hold down 2 jobs. There is a different picture of the pot smoker than the happy, munchies-laden giggle.
That might be true. We also have doctors and all kinds of programs and money that gets funneled into these programs from the legal business to try to handle that. To your other point about youth, they're not supposed to be getting at the marijuana true fact, they are getting at it. So as the other caller stated, and I would have to agree, is you go after the people that are the problem. You don't try to throw the business owner didn't sell to the kid. The growers didn't sell to the kid.
In the case of the pot industry, the business owners are taking THC and making gummies. Now, you know as well as I do that you can't make gummies with tequila because that would be illegal because it's a product that appeals to youth. That vapes can't be made flavored. Or is it vapes that can't be made flavored, or that nicotine gum can't be sold flavored in Massachusetts because it would appeal to youth? Those sorts of restrictions aren't in play when you talk about gummies being sold in these pot shops, and that is leading directly to children. And in this case, I'm not talking about...
But the children can't buy them.
But they find them in their house.
Well, that's something... We're not going to close down a pot shop because a kid found it in his house or her house.
Is that true? What if
I hope it is.
So, we talked about guns the other day. What if a kid found a gun in the house?
They always do.
Yeah, I don't know, Brian. We do. This is where the libertarian philosophy often falls apart. I think there is a responsibility to the maker of a gummy that looks like candy if a child ends up ingesting too many of them.
No, I think we put the blame on the parents like we normally do because the parents let it out, not because the makers made it. The makers made a legitimate product. They sold a legitimate product. Was that product stored properly? We can argue whether it was or was not, but that was long removed from the manufacturer and then the actual seller, the retailer.
Yeah. I hear you. I make that argument a lot myself. I am a big believer in familial responsibility. But I do think that the pot industry has been allowed to make candy-like confections that would not be allowed in the alcohol community.
Okay, fair enough. If that's how you feel, why not just go after, okay, so you can't make gummies. Why not just go after that part of the industry? Why try to throw the whole thing out? In fact, I would say it like this. Look what we see with like bottle bills and whatnot. They go out. Let's go after the sugary drinks and those kind of things. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah. Yeah, it's not what we have in front of us, Brian. That's it's a big conversation, and we did drift into an area that is a little spongier.
Spongier? You mean the cushion? We can go up and down? Is that what it is? When you say spongier?
What I mean is that we started talking about gummies and how many of the products that recreational pot shops sell. And the idea of recreational pot itself is something that encourages misuse by children. And then you and I disagree on that issue, so I'm ready to move beyond it and to say, yes, that's not the main thrust of what we're talking about today. It's spongy.
Yeah, fair enough. Fair enough. Wendy Wakeman is our guest. She is the chairperson of the Coalition for a Healthy Massachusetts. They're trying a ballot question. They want to get it on for 2026 to regulate marijuana use. And by regulating, if I'm understanding correctly, medicinal marijuana or marijuana for medical purposes, that will still be allowed. But the recreational sale of marijuana, that would come to a halt. And I guess the idea of cannabis cafes, they'll go down the drain. Another part of the industry, because we have people here that are trying to invest in marijuana. What does it do to the people that are investing in a legitimate industry?
I think that regulation, state and federal regulation, is always going to make investing. It's what makes investing risky, right? Investing is always risky. One of the reasons you get big returns is because you take great risks. And the folks who are participating, who have invested in the recreational marijuana market, know that it's a risky market. I mean, less than half of the states in the United States have allowances for recreational marijuana, and it is unclear if in the future the feds plan to change their regulations. Right now, as we said to the caller earlier, right now there doesn't seem to be a problem with the differing federal and state laws, but that could change. It's not an industry that has a lot of stability.
The marijuana industry.
Yeah.
I you know what? I've never looked at it from that angle. You very well may be right on that. I don't. What is the stability of marijuana when you think about it? Right for the time you smoke it, you're kind of unstable. But be that, and of course, I've never done a gummy before, so I don't know what it would be like from that angle. But I had some friends, some college roommates. They wanted me to do some gummies with them last night, and I said, no, thanks anyway. But
yeah.
But
no, I thought meant in the way, in the same way that right now investing in energy in wind energy is a little bit risky because we don't know whether the current big push for everybody to be involved in wind is going to be something that's sustained as we're getting pushback against wind energy, right? So that's an unstable investing area.
Especially around here where they're trying, you've got politicians that want it down here, but a lot of people are balking at it. And either way we look at it, our energy prices keep going up. Let's take another call for Wendy Wakeman. Hello.
Good morning. Good afternoon.
Good evening.
Good evening, whatever it is. I think the pot that they sell now is so much stronger than what people used to buy off the street. And I think that's the high risk of the psychosis is because it's so pure and so strong. It's a totally different thing than somebody. And like you said, I think if you have a gummies around or a brownie or whatever you have around that kids would eat, if you had a bag of pot and you got a 5 or 6 year old, they're not going to roll the joint. They don't know how to do that. So gummies and things look like what kids would want to eat. And I know it's so much stronger. And I think that's the problem now is it's so easy to buy pot and it's so strong. And there's lots of problems out there with that.
So where are you going with this?
I don't know. I think they should either make it less strong. I don't know if that's, possible. I don't know why it needs to be so strong and so pure. I mean, they've perfected this to a way that it's so strong. And I think, like, in my life, the people that I know have smoked pot their whole lives, and this just might be me, don't have much ambition. They've never gone very far. They never got out of, small-time jobs. They never had any ambition to go any further. And, you see people, the smell of it's everywhere. You get out of a car, somebody gets out of a car, somebody drives by you in a car. And, I think legalizing pot was the absolute wrong thing to do.
Wendy Wakeman, thank you for your call, by the way.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Go ahead, Wendy.
I think your caller has expressed a lot of the sentiment that we hear from people who are engaged and excited about signing the petition. That it just, in terms of quality of life, it's not helping the quality of life. There are a lot of pot smokers who are going to argue vociferously that legalized recreational marijuana has helped their quality of life. But for the rest of us, I'm not sure it has.
That's a fair assumption. But when it comes to Election Day, and I know you've already made the answer here, but I'm going to have you do it again. How do you think it's going to roll out on the vote day? Because I do think you're going to get the signatures.
It'll be great if we get the signatures because these discussions are important to have. For example, just from having this discussion, Brian, I think we both might in the future think more about how gummies really should be. They shouldn't be in the shape of teddy bears. Kids should, we need to make sure that they're not appealing to children. So just by having the discussions, we become aware of problems. I honestly am not sure. I think it's been a part of our culture for a long time now, almost 10 years. We've had recreational marijuana for almost 10 years now, and it's very hard to roll back time on things like that. But the reason why this committee formed is because there are a lot of people who are very engaged in saying, hey, it is not a net positive for us as a state. I think it could go either way.
Wendy Wakeman, I want to give you the last word here. Go ahead.
Well, if people, if you see the signature papers out when you're out and about, give it a sign. I'd love to come back and talk to you again, Brian, maybe when it's clear whether we have the signatures or don't have the signatures. And I really appreciate you giving me the time to talk about it today.
No problem. I said it was the last word. I always lie to myself and to my interviewee. I sat here and I said, I think you're going to get the signatures. You are throwing up question marks to that. That's the third time that you've done it. Why do you think you're not going to be able to get the signatures?
Well, we're gonna move off of the topic of marijuana right now to talk about signature gathering. Getting the signatures for these initiative petitions is really tough work. It really is. First of all, you have to get 75,000. No more than 20% can be from any one county. And then the town and city clerks go through them. They make sure the people who've signed have been registered to vote. They then go to the Secretary of State's office. The Secretary of State's office has a lot of rules that have to be followed on these sheets about form and about the quality of the signatures and the color of the ink in the pen. Far more ballot question proposals go out to try to get signatures than actually get the signatures and get on the ballot.
Really?
Yeah.
Actually, I know part of that, but I just thought that this particular question, there are so many people that were against marijuana even becoming legal that they'd be jumping at joy to sign your petition. I think
people might be jumping for joy to do it. It's a logistic nightmare, and there are a lot of bureaucratic hurdles.
Gotcha. Wendy Wakeman, Thank you so much. And I'd love to have you back.
All right. Talk soon, Brian.
All right.
Liberty, once lost, is lost forever.
This is WBSM.
I left full-time radio to become an alternative business funder. Next month, we're offering free certification classes so we can help owners receive anywhere from $15,000 up to $2 million. If you know anyone looking for a lucrative part or full-time opportunity, have them call 774-473-5250. We're Survive, Save, Serve. 774-473-5250.
Everything from clothing to household items are getting more expensive each day. The world of fast fashion has complicated clothing production by outsourcing around the world to whoever can sew them the cheapest. And now you, the consumer, are paying the price with rising costs. American Giant is about keeping things simple and close to home. They aren't affected by tariffs because their products never leave the U.S. So when you buy from American Giant, you're taking a stand for hardworking people, local communities, and quality clothes. American Giant directly supports American manufacturers and ensures you aren't footing that tariff bill. Support American-made, tariff-free clothing with American Giant. Get 20% off your first order when you use promo code STAPLE20 at American-Giant.com. That's 20% off when you use code STAPLE20 at American-Giant.com.
There's no better fool than the Freedom Fools. Now, back to Brian.
Freedom, 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 freedom.
Some residents joke that there's no drug problem in New Bedford. There's plenty to go around for everyone.
I want to thank Wendy Wakeman for coming on to the program today. You've heard me long enough to understand where I'm coming from. Are there bad characters out there? Unfortunately, they are. But instead of depriving everybody, why don't we just go after the bad characters? You know, if somebody is selling marijuana that should not be selling marijuana, all right, let's put the handcuffs on that particular person. Let's not handcuff the good people who are going to the Cannas or whatever the particular store is to buy their cannabis or their gummies, whatever it is that they want to buy. And I understand when Wendy Wakeman says, you know, we're gonna make sure that you have your marijuana for medicinal purposes, but sometimes somebody doesn't want to go out and get a medical card just to relax her or himself, and they shouldn't have to. This is something that is normally grown organically. So, you know, here we are once again trying to fight something that really doesn't need to be fought. And I understand that there are kids that are getting at marijuana, but the law says that they shouldn't. You know, when I was a kid, the law said that if you were under the age of 18, you couldn't drink alcohol. And yet I could go into a packy at 15, 16 years old because people thought I looked 18. And so they sold it to me. Now the laws got much tighter as the drinking age went up to 20 and 21, but by that time I was already legal. Things have changed. We don't outlaw alcohol, and I think everyone will admit in this day and age that alcohol is worse than marijuana. Or is that next on the list? Once you stop the marijuana thing, you can go after the Budweiser, and then you can go after the Jim Beam. Is that what we're going to do? Go after the winos? No, we're going to go after the wine, not the winos. So I've got some problems. I'll tell you what, though. If you were so inclined, if you were one of those back in 2016 that voted to not allow marijuana to be legal, maybe you want to sign on to one of Wendy's petitions. And when they have them around here, I'll let you know. If you want to sign on, you're all the power to you. I do think it'll be a close vote. I do think that keeping the pot shops open will succeed, will win out, however way the question ends up getting phrased. I don't think the people of the Commonwealth are ready to give up. There's one thing else that is mentioned here in the release from the Coalition for a Healthy Massachusetts. They say nearly 40% of Massachusetts cities and towns have already opted out of allowing recreational pot stores in their communities. And that is true. 40% is still less than half. And I don't know exactly how many pot stores there are in the Commonwealth, but more are trying to come online. I know that there's one that has been trying for the past few years to get on in New Bedford, and there are some rules and regulations that change, or so they have been led to believe. And so I think that there are going to be more pot stores opening up. You might not like it, but again, the more stores that are open, maybe the more flexibility with the price. One caller made a good point about the fact that marijuana seems to be a lot more potent. And my friends who I was with last night, they totally agreed with that. And their comeback to that is they don't need to smoke as much compared to the pot that we used to smoke back in college and for many years after college. So that's where we are in this particular game. I say let's keep the pot shops open. Let's not put legitimate businesses out of business. We already have enough folk trying to do that around the United States.
To get our check.
WBSM.
Here's what's happening this week on Town Square Sunday. Lots of fishing talk on this week's program. We've got early details on the 2025 Blount Fine Foods New Bedford Seaport Chowder Festival. It's happening October 11th on Pier 3. Katie Green of One South Coast Chamber will have a rundown of participating restaurants, music performers, and more. And Joe Ritter stops by with details about programs in October and November at the New Bedford Fishing Heritage Center. They include maritime art, fishing-related films, and another profile of a prominent fishing family in Greater New Bedford. I'm Jim Phillips. Join me Sunday morning at 6 and 11 for Town Square Sunday on 1420 WBSM and 99.5 FM.
People ask all the time, who the heck is Low Cost Airlines? Well, we're not just one airline. When you're talking to us, you're talking to everyone. We are the discount supermarket for all airline tickets. Plus, we have all the airlines and always have the best prices. American, Delta, United, plus all the specialized international airlines and a lot more. And we make it easy. We guarantee you'll talk to a live human in 60 seconds. You can have the rate you need and have your trip booked in 5 minutes. Now, how cool is that? And remember, when you're talking to us, it's like talking to every single airline available with one fast phone call. All you need to do is call and find the best prices to fly wherever it is you want to go. So are you ready? Call Low Cost Airlines right now. 800-221-6085. 800-221-6085. 800-221-6085. That's 800-221-6085.
Freedom Pools on WBSM. Here's more with Brian Thomas.
He said cops are not crime fighters. They respond to crime, little daddy. By the time the cops get there, you already been messed over.
By the time the cops get there, you've been messed over. I think the police have been less burdened by not having to worry about every little incident dealing with marijuana. There's a police officer listening. I'd be curious. But Wendy Wakeman tried to make the point about, well, look what's been going on with the sheriff of Suffolk County, or former sheriff of Suffolk County, and Shannon, can't think of her last name, the CCC chairman. Well, we've had illegal tampering with money